Hello everyone, it's Helen at Journaling Planet. With Halloween fast approaching, I'm going to work with a little bit of a spooky image in my Ekphrastic journal today. This particular image was picked up for me by a friend out of somebody else's recycling. It was part of an old calendar about 1950s B-movies, and it is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. I share this story just to underline that if you share about your craft with other people, they will start looking out for things for you. They'll think it's really cool that you do these wonderful upcycling projects. And a big part of this channel is trying to use things that would otherwise go to landfill, try and help the environment. And I've got a much better chance of doing that if I take other people with me and essentially create a band of minions who are out looking at other people's recycling for cool things for me to craft with. And that's what I've done here. Now, in a moment, I'm going to glue this piece of paper in, and I'm going to use it as a springboard for a writing exercise, which is usually what ekphrastic writing is. If you want a more in-depth explanation of that and the origins of the word, there is a whole playlist on my Ekphrastic journal. And you can click on that below, and the very first video tells you, I think, all you really need to know about ekphrasis and sort of where it comes from. But for today's video, I'm going to be using this image. I'm going to be using it as a writing springboard, and to give some of you a sense of what that means, what I mean when I say I'm going to use it as a writing springboard, what kind of things I might get out of that process. I will share the journal entry that I write on screen with you, and maybe it will actually generate some interesting starting points for a journal entry for you. Before I start reading the journal entry and share with you what this image sparked for me in terms of theme and ideas, I will just give a little bit of a content description. I do reference in my journal entry my husband's cancer diagnosis, and I'm writing about the horror genre and what it has meant to me over the years. So anyone who right now isn't feeling like they really want to listen to something about those topics, you might want to click to one of my other videos. But for those of you who are happy to listen to what I discuss around the horror genre and how my opinion of it has changed over the years, how it's made more sense to me, do stay tuned because I'm going to read that journal entry just now. And although I do reference some sad topics when I'm writing about it, it is all in the spirit of exploring what the horror genre is and why it's a useful thing to have in our culture. It sort of makes me laugh that something so serious could come out of such a silly image. I mean, look at the crazy alien on that poster. Look at the insane lettering and how kind of ridiculously hyperbolic it is. And yet it did lead me to quite an interesting, poignant, and at times quite serious place in my writing. I think all this goes to show that when we are in that creative space, it's not always the stimulus that dictates the tone, but us. It's not the things that we use, but the prism through which we see those things. And I think that's a very useful thing to keep in mind when we're creating. I think there is a very famous quote, and I think it might be Anais Nin. Can somebody jump in the comments and correct me if I'm wrong? But I think it might be Anais Nin, and she says something along the lines of, we don't see things how they are, we see them as we are. And I've always found that really interesting. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to read to you the entry from my journal, and I will come back with some closing comments. Although as a child, or shall we say teen, I used to watch horror movies to demonstrate to my friends I wasn't scared of anything, as I matured, I stepped away from that pretense. I had an overactive imagination, an attribute I would ultimately pour into my work as a fiction author. But that particular personality trait didn't make me a good horror viewer. Even texts such as Frankenstein, a book considered tame by modern standards, scared me so much I had to put it down. Over the years, I turned my mind and my eyes to fluffier genres. And even from my perspective as a writer, I struggled to see why people took such pleasure in the horror genre, in creating these disgusting scenarios, in wanting to scare people and wanting to be scared. It wasn't until my husband was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer at the age of 39 that I got it, that I understood why writers would want to write about an indiscriminate, unstoppable, and lethal force or creature that picked people off one by one, that I understood why that might be cathartic, and why some viewers and readers might be hungry for stories in which somebody manages to survive that situation and the utter sense of helplessness that it wreaks. The monsters in a horror movie might not be representative of cancer so far as the writer is concerned, but the very nature of these stories allows the reader or viewer to project whatever they need to onto the villain of the piece. Terminal illness, a mental health condition, an abusive partner, a merciless tyrant. People live in the shadow of such forces every day. So it is only natural that we should need stories to help us process and confront the reality we live in. I still avoid anything too gratuitously gory, but I have returned to the horror genre of late with a more open mind. And so long as there aren't too many jump scares, which I still view as the cheap shot of the genre, I have found them to be thought-provoking and compelling. I think my changing relationship with the horror genre illustrates how culture can mean different things to us and resonate with us in different ways at different times in our lives. I still undoubtedly have that overactive imagination, but as a woman who was widowed at 41, you might say there isn't much out there that scares me anymore. Sorry, Freddy Krueger. Better luck next time. So as you can see in that particular journal entry, I took the image and I took what it was representative of, and I thought about my relationship with that thing, in this case, horror movies or scary movies. I'm not sure exactly how scary that movie was with the aliens in. By modern standards, possibly not that scary, although you would be surprised how some older movies can really get that suspense going and really get you on edge. But I wanted to explore this idea of the horror genre and my relationship with it and how it had changed over the years. And if you would like to do some writing in your journal today, you could take the same prompt. You could even use my image off the screen if you wanted to, and think about the horror genre and your relationship with it and your understanding of it. I think we need only look as far as the evening news to see true horror, personally. And for many of us, horror has played out in our own lives. And that's something else that you might want to write about if you're feeling in a space where you can. How the horror genre has played out in your life and how you've managed to find the resilience to get through those times. Now, obviously, as I say, that image was quite a silly image, and I might just as easily have taken this to a much funnier and sillier place. And I suppose in the closing lines, I try to a little bit, telling Freddy Krueger that I wish him better luck next time. But it's important to remember that the stimulus does not have to dictate our tone, that we can take a piece of art or an image anywhere we want it to go. We are the keepers of our own journals. They are our space where we have complete freedom to do whatever we wish. And that is one of the most magnificent things about keeping one. So do look around in your craft room today, or look around in your house. See if you've got an image that you think would be an interesting springboard. You don't have to cut it out as I did and stick it into the journal. I just like to do that. You could just as easily look at it and write straight from it. If you haven't got much time, set yourself a timer of 10 or even 5 minutes and see how you're doing when the clock stops. Maybe you'll find another 1 or 2 minutes to add to the time. Time spent with your journal is time for you, time that you're giving yourself. And that is really, really important in this world. You've heard people talk about on planes before you take off that you must put your own oxygen mask on if there's an incident in flight, and you must put yours on first. I think a journal acts much in the same way. It is a kind of oxygen mask for us. It is a way of keeping ourselves happy and alive. I hope this video has been inspiring and interesting for you. I look forward to hearing in the comments about any journaling that you do. There'll be another video along soon. Take care, and I'll see you next time.